And finally, what could be the highlight of the show, Mike Normin in studio, the number one guy at the IDS for men's basketball this year. Kind of a big deal. But, Mike, first off, I think what most people are concerned about for this year is the Jerkin Perry situation. Do you have any update on that?
Just coming out, it looks like both will be suspended for a number of games. The numbers right now, it looks like coming out is 9 for both players. So seems like a substantial loss, but when you really look at where these 9 games are going to be taken out of, it's at the front end of this season. This is during the non-conference point where, you know, this is the point where you want to work out those kinks. Obviously, not having those 9 games to work into the season might hurt these players and their development, but with the depth that IU has, at least on paper, it looks like, you know, they could take that hit moving forward.
You talk about how deep this team is, and that's another reason why it's probably not going to hurt this team. But talking about the depth of this team, how many players are going to see, or how many players are going to see the court, you know, throughout these games, especially in the non-conference?
It seems like the running joke around Bloomington and around all the media members is that Tom Crean is going to run his substitutions kind of like a hockey game. And that means that there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to be coming in and out. You might have quick bursts for guys, such as like Remy Abel, Victor Oladipo, Will Sheehy, the guys that go really hard for bursts. So we're going to see a lot of guys play, and that's the one thing that's really cool about IU's offense, is that they have guys that could go 1 to 10 deep. And obviously these ineligibilities of Peter Jerkin, Hunter Perea, it's going to hurt, but once that actually comes back in, once we move into the Butler game, we're going to see that depth really kick in.
I know you were at the Big Ten Media Day.
Oh, yeah.
What did you take away from that day? What were the kind of the key points from it really around the league?
Yeah, I mean, the one big thing that you noticed right away was Indiana was the talk of the Big Ten Media Day. If there was one thing a lot of coaches were being asked, it was about Indiana. You know, how do you stack yourself up against the number 1 team in the nation? So with that, it's also about Cody Zeller and how this guy, preseason player of the year, is just going to be so dominant that teams are going to have to mismatch and work their way around it. So that was the big talk. Also, a lot of talk about just the strength of the league. If you look at it, there's 4 teams in the top 25 right there. You also have the Wisconsins. You also have Minnesota, who I wouldn't sleep on this year, obviously having a little early season problems with Tubby Smith, Tubby Smith's son, getting a DUI before the season. So
it's unfortunate.
Unfortunate, yeah. You know, not so hot of a start for the Golden Gophers, but they're a team that's going to bounce back, especially when you have a good coach like Tubby Smith. I wouldn't sleep on them. So just from top to bottom, the one thing that really stands out about the Big Ten is that the Big Ten has depth.
Mm-hmm. So if you were to name a starting 5, I'm putting you on the spot, who would you start as your top 5?
We saw it in the first exhibition game against Indiana Wesleyan, and it was Yogi Ferrell running the point. You have Jordan Hulls there as the 2, Victor Oladipo playing 3, and then you fill it in with Watford and Cody Zeller. Obviously, those guys are going to be in there throughout the mix. You believe that Jordan Hulls is going to stay in the starting lineup throughout the season, but when you look at it, and
how good is Yogi? I mean, how good is Yogi?
That's what I was going to say. And at this point, Yogi just is the guy that's going to hold the ball. He's going to be the guy that is going to bring the ball up 85% of the time when he's on the floor. Obviously, Jordan Hulls is still a floor general. He's the guy that is going to lead you. He's the guy that you want on the floor, especially in those crucial moments. But in terms of overall talent and what you bring, Yogi can break down a defense more than anybody on this team. The way that he's just so quick to the basket, he's strong upper body, and he also has vision beyond anybody. Tom Crean said that Yogi Ferrell has the best vision of any point guard he's ever coached. That's a big compliment.
That's a huge compliment.
Yeah, so you know, when you mix in Yogi Ferrell with Jordan Hulls, maybe you start in certain matchups when you play Michigan, when they have Trey Burke and Tim Hardaway Jr., that's when you might mix a match. That's when you might see Jordan Hulls come off the bench. Overall, though, I mean, I would see, unless one of those guys get injured, I would expect to see those guys on the floor starting off.
All right, so looking at this Bryant game, are we going to see another start like we did against Indiana Wesleyan where a bunch of white boys were out playing number 1 team in the nation? Could that happen against Bryant?
You know, that's basketball.
Right,
that's
right.
basketball. And, you know, obviously everyone was a little disappointed with the start of Indiana Wesleyan, maybe for good reason. But, you know, it's an exhibition game. You have a slow start. You still beat the team by almost 30 points, you know, and obviously Hoosier fans were kind of holding their breath there, but if another slow start happens against Bryant, you gotta look at the end result. And, you know, what Tom Crean is preaching to his players is that you work every day to get better, and each day you get that much better, and the end result will be there. And it's certainly going to be there against Bryant.
All right, who's the leading scorer Friday?
Leading scorer Friday. You know what? This is going to be the hardest thing to pick all year. How are you going to pick the leading scorer day in and day out, night in, night out? But, looking at Fridays, I expect Cody Zeller to have a big game. I think he's going to come out strong. Also, I was just looking at the stats just from throughout the Big Ten. Entering this season, Christian Watford is the active leading scorer in the Big Ten by 4 points over Tim Frazier. I think he's going to want to come out, extend that lead a little bit. So I expect Watford and Zeller down low.
All right, Mike, well, give us a plug for your stuff over the IDS.
Well, we have Normin's Noise, my column on IDS. I'm sure, if you check out the IDS, it will be there before the games, after the games. We got a couple things up there on the web right now. So if you want to check out the column, IDS Sports. Also, Sports Talk Show on WIUX if you want to listen. Thursday night, 6 to 8, 99.1.
Yeah, look at Mike Normin over here. Stud here for IUSTV Media.
Nolan, always a pleasure. Love coming on Hoosier Sport.
Yeah, and now that basketball season's on, we might see you weekly here.
This is my seat. I'll write my name on the bottom of it. We'll make sure that I have this one each and every time.
That's excellent. That's really great.